Chapter 4 Suicide's One Big Domino. I had a problem as a little boy growing up in the small town in the shadow of the great Rocky Mountains. Although most of my days were full of finding ways to occupy myself, there were some rare moments where I would cry and shake. This always came about right after my mind had wandered ever so slightly into trying to understand eternity. Maybe it was the lack of physical development of my brain at that age, and my mind's lack of ability to wrap around abstract ideas. Maybe it was the fact that our limited brains are not created with the ability to understand infinity. Maybe it was my rigid religious upbringing that tried to understand who created my higher power. Whatever it was, it helped to eventually lead my mind to always try to figure out the root of the evolution of an idea. By seeing and treating thousands of patients over the years, I eventually came to search for the root cause of suicide. Why did people want to commit suicide? What is the root cause that drives some people to consider it? What didn't occur to me until much later was the realization that I had no idea of what the answer to those questions would provide. If I was to go back, a good question that I should have asked myself would have been, when I find the root cause of why people consider suicide, what benefit will that give them? What benefit will that give me? That's a big question. The answer is so much bigger still. Let me ask you a few questions. If you could learn what I believe to be the root cause of suicide, would that be helpful to you? If you could learn in the following pages how to change what you see as a negative thought of suicide into a benefit, would that be of value to you? Of course it would. What if I could help to clarify the confusion of a loved one that is considering taking their own life? How would that make you feel, and if when you help them on their path to happiness? The very act of thinking out the answers to these questions proves that we, as the human species, can be self-aware. We are not only able to notice that we exist just as animals do, we also have the ability to contemplate where we came from and where we are going as well. Other animals do not have self-consciousness. They do not have the ability to see the future. I know some say that animals are smarter than us, and due to their instincts, they are in some cases. Yet we alone have the amazing ability to consciously know who we are. The world-renowned psychologist Carl Jung wrote over 20 books. Countless others have been written about him and his ideas. To this day, he is still respected as one of the most influential minds of the 20th century. Yet he had a student named Erich Neumann who wrote a fantastic book called The Origins and History of Consciousness. In the book, he presented the idea that we did not gain self-consciousness until we became humans. I'm not talking about the different kinds of ape men. I'm not talking about Neanderthals, not Cro-Magnon, not even Homo erectus. I'm talking about humans, people just like us, the same quantity of body hair, standing straight up like us, and thinking as we're thinking. We did not become conscious until this level of evolutionary development. Yet we still have the unconscious mind that guides us. The unconscious mind is always present and helping us guide our desire for survival. Carl Jung had a few different big theories that became popular. One of them is called perception as projection. Have you ever heard someone say, that person is just projecting that onto me? Well, that came from his perception as projection idea. What Jung was saying is what we see in somebody else is what we truly see in ourselves. It's kind of like this. If you see something that just irritates the crap out of you, something that bugs you about somebody, guess what? You might be doing that same thing in a slightly different way. Deep down, what you don't like in someone might be what you don't like in yourself. That might seem a little bit harsh, but there's a good side to this too. You see, when you see that thing that you love in another person, that's what you truly see in yourself as well. That's a beautiful thing. The strong or admirable behavior, that thing that you're grateful for, that's you too. You are the good you see in someone else. You are the beautiful you in someone else. One of these things that Jung was pointing out here is an amazing idea that we most frequently see is the negative of what we want to know. Now, why would that exist? Why would that hold onto our development and evolution as a species? Why would that survive? It wasn't just the lack of heavy body hair that survived. It wasn't just the whites of our eyes that survived. It was our natural behaviors in the way that we think consciously and unconsciously that help us survive. We hold on to this behavior because we see the value of it. Even if we do not see the value of it consciously, we see the value of it unconsciously. It is much easier for us to notice something negative than to see something positive because we must be constantly on the lookout for something that could harm us. Remember, we had to keep an eye out for the dangerous so that we could adjust for it and survive. Ask yourself, do you more easily notice negative thoughts or positive thoughts? What about the person that you might love that is contemplating taking their life? Do you think that positive or negative thoughts come easier for them? The reason those negative thoughts present themselves more easily is so that we don't freeze. They are present so that they can run on autopilot and call our attention to them so that we can turn towards the problem, focus on it, and consciously find a way to solve the problem. The negative ideas of suicide are there simply to call our attention to the problems that are in our own life or our loved one's life so that we can focus on them and change them. But that's not quite all of it. There's an important second half to this theory. Jung had another fantastic idea called shadow work. Inside the realm of shadow work was an idea known to some as the reverse mirror image. It's a process of going into our own minds and ideas and looking at the reverse mirror image of what's presenting to us as a negative thought. When I would ask the youth the last question of the CSSRS, why did you want to end your life? I would receive the most important insight to what their own personal shadow idea or negative thought. The thought is what we can then turn around 180 degrees and therefore find the positive from their previously noticed negative thought. I do want to point out, however, that I changed the wording of the question just a little bit. Why did I change the question? Because why is not a good question. In my mind, why is actually a poor response question. Why is a question that prevents the mind from truly thinking and looking for greater understanding. The word why puts the mind in a frame and a mindset that helps the person to focus on finding excuses instead of the root value or reason of why they did or didn't do something. Why is an exit or escape word that doesn't push the person to really look into themselves. Instead of asking these kids questions, why did you attempt to commit suicide? I would ask them, for what purpose did you try to commit suicide? Or, for what purpose did you hurt yourself? Just a small little switch of wording helps to focus in a different way. The clarity that comes to the person's mind is amazing. Amazing to the point that when they are saying their response to you, they will likely be amazed as well at how clear of an answer they provided for you. It will shock you. I know it shocked me. There are a few different scheduled responses the actual form gives us to help guide them towards a response. Yet, in my opinion, it is better to learn to sit in the uncomfortable silence and wait for them to come up with the answer, then to provide the prompts. There is an old sales technique theory that states the first one to speak is the one that loses, meaning that the first one to speak will get the sell. This is the most important sell of your life, to help them to come to the reality and understanding of themselves by themselves. When we give the answer or solution to such a serious life decision to them, it is easy for them to deny the idea as invalid since it did not come from themselves. Yet when any of us realize something on our own, we hold that truth as an infinite truth for the rest of our lives. So please find the strength to sit in that silence and allow them to find the answer to their own question. They will find it, and it will sit with them as a truth for the rest of their days. Now, what happens if or when a person says, "I don't know"? Well, here's a little trick that I teach to a few of my trainings people. I simply respond with, "I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would the reason be?" This gives them the freedom to not feel the pressure of having to come up with the right answer and simply come up with whatever answer comes to their mind first, which is the right answer anyway. Remember, if this is a person that is contemplating suicide, they likely have been feeling a sense of doubt for a long time. Their confidence might be shot. By giving them the freedom to make a guess at what the real answer is and providing positive reinforcement, it increases their confidence and belief in themselves. Now, getting back to the CSSRS prompts, some of them are to get rid of the pain or a cry for attention, etc. Only in the rare and unique situations have I given those prompts. Most of the time, the person would simply say, "to end the pain." Some of the other common responses I would receive were, "I hurt so much," "to stop my mind from thinking all the time," or "to make it all go away." Here's the cool thing though. That is not what they are really thinking. That's simply what they believe that they are thinking. That's simply what is being presented to them by their own unconscious mind to their conscious mind. There's a reverse mirror image of that statement, the shadow. The absolute opposite of their statement is simply rising to the surface and presenting itself here so that they can notice it, change it, and actually use it as a map to show them how to go after the life they really want. It is a map of how each one of us can find a life full of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment that we are all seeking. It's as if that negative thought is truly saying, "Hey, I got a huge problem over here, and I'm not living my life in line with what I want. That's why I feel so incredibly uncomfortable. That's why I'm looking for an escape from the pain, the hurt, the confusion. I'm looking for a way out and towards what I truly want." We see the problem, or what we believe to be the problem, very clearly. The problem is, I don't want the pain. Yet if we look at the reverse mirror image, we find the root cause of suicide is not to get rid of the pain. It's not a negative thing. It is, in fact, a positive thing that has been disguised as a negative thing. Our role is to unwrap the layers of the negative until we find the true root cause. And what is the true root cause? To have happiness, to be at peace, to feel fulfilled, to feel important, to be important, to feel love, to be loved. When we have a family member or a loved one that took their own life, it's important to remember that it was not because they were looking for something bad and were purely focused on that. It's because they simply had not realized that what they were truly looking for was something good that might not have been present in their life at that moment they decided to take their life. Maybe it was there, and they simply were not able to notice that it was there. They grabbed on to the negative thing because it was the closest thing they could see, feel, or hear that was tied to the underlying reality of what gives their individual life purpose. By asking additional questions that go beyond the questions outlined in the CSSRS, the most common answer I heard when we got to the root cause of why they wanted to take their own life was peace, love, or connection. They were simply seeking a better place than the life or the situation they saw for themselves at that time. It is not inconsequential that most of the world's religions teach of a heaven-like place after this. It might be called different things: paradise, heaven, exaltation. The name is not important. What is important is to know that there seems to be hardwired into us the idea of a better place after this life. Something to search for, something to hope for, something to look forward to. If I have the freedom to state my own opinion, I strongly believe in a higher power. Yet I also know that somewhere in the deep recesses of our unconscious minds, we have this hardwired into our brains and body, the belief in a better place after this life. Let's think of this logically. At this point in time, to understand ourselves, we look to the science of psychology. Ideas and theories are presented and proven through hours and hours of research by the greatest minds of our time. Close and constant observation and questioning of groups of people utilizing the scientific method to find variations and similarities in human nature. Yet in the history of human existence, this process of trying to understand human nature and behavior is relatively new. It was not until 1879, because of the efforts of Wilhelm Wundt, that it became academically accepted as a valid form of study. Prior to that, many others were trying to explain the human experience, human nature, and human behavior were philosophers, working out ideas that were believed to be truths that defined how we act and why we believe what we believe. It was an honorable and well-respected profession, even if the Greeks feared Socrates leading the youth astray. Today, philosophy is still held in high regard and honorable. Yet in the words of one great philosopher and the father of modern physics, Sir Isaac Newton, "If I have seen further, it is because I've stood on the shoulders of giants." So what is this giant's shoulders whose philosophy stood on? Religion. Although some in this modern day and age look at religion as a negative entity in need of reform, I personally do not believe that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. The ideas that have remained consistent in this world's religions over thousands of years have remained for a reason. They have remained because they resonate as an unknown and undefinable belief in the hearts and minds of men and women. It is arrogant to say that the estimated 52 plus billion people that came before us, those same people that did not have the distractions of the modern world, and much more time to simply think and ponder on the world and the people around them, were stupid and superstitious people. To imply that they were dumb, simply guided by others with no connection to their own feelings and therefore individual beliefs, is a highly self-absorbed idea of the modern-day man. The truth is that these indigenous ancestors of ours were possibly finding mutual agreement in what they each individually believed. This concept is further supported by the ideas set forth by the modern-day philosopher and author Matt Ridley in his book The Red Queen, Sex and the Evolution of Human Nature. His 1994 book was on the shortlist for the Roane Punick Prize, partially for its theory and the scientific proof that backed it up, that we as a species not only evolved physically, but that our thoughts as a species evolved as well. Thoughts that did not serve a purpose did not survive in our minds, just like how walking on all fours did not survive because we did not need it to any longer. So, what does this all mean? It means two things. First, it means that psychology evolved from philosophy, and that philosophy evolved from religion, in the search to understand ourselves in the world that we live in. Second, it means that the belief in a better life after this one, a heaven or paradise-like existence, is, in fact, a belief that all of us hold within our unconscious mind. With the understanding of this reality, it helps us to understand that those that contemplate suicide, as well as those who have committed suicide, were simply looking for a better place, a better situation, a better world or existence, a better life. It might not be actual heaven, but a better place all the same. But what does that mean? It means that when we know that someone is looking for a better life, a better existence, all we must do is help them to find and realize what would be the best situation for them. At the very least, to help place them or yourself on the path to achieving that life. We will discuss this process a little bit deeper in the chapter titled Superman. We have these thoughts neurologically hardwired into us. There is a knowledge of something, someplace better. We always point to heaven. It's easy for us to utilize the terminology heaven. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not a guy in a robe. Maybe it's not Gaia. Maybe it's not the universal power. Maybe we're in a computer simulation. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what comes after this life. But I know there's something more. People who are searching and who think of suicide, maybe even yourself, at one point in time, think about this undefined truth, that there is a desire to get to that better place. In addition, here's an interesting thought. We have ideas and thoughts that are deep down in the unconscious mind. As we stated earlier, we have a filter between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. Two separate filters. One is called the reticular activating system, and the other is called the conscious critical faculties. The conscious critical faculties help us to interpret the world around us. It works based on information and experiences that have been already learned earlier in life. It's kind of like a firewall between the conscious and the unconscious mind to help stop messages that would lead us to do things that could hurt us. All of us have this filter. It allows us to send information down between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. Sometimes we go so deep into the basement of our unconscious that the questions and answers take months, years, and even decades to appear to us. Sometimes they never even evolve over an entire lifetime. Yet there's an interesting representation of Buddha sitting on a lotus pad. In some of these statues where he is sitting on the lotus pad, his head is tilted down as if he's bowing. Some say that this is him bowing in meditation and reverence. Others believe that what he is actually doing is pondering the water that the lotus pad is floating on. That's an interesting idea. If we think of it as if he is looking down into the dark, murky pond, we might think, what could that mean? What could that represent? And what's with him being able to sit on top of a lotus pad and not sink into the pond? Jordan B. Peterson stated that this is simply a representation of something that goes on deep in each and every one of our minds. The reasons for Buddha being on the pad, looking down through the murkiness, is to show us that from deep down, eventually, the lotus pad comes to the surface. The pad comes closer and closer to the surface. It becomes clear to see. The same is true for our own personal understanding of things that are buried deep down in our unconscious mind. I believe that when we understand that people are not truly searching for and only see the pain, but that they are searching for healing, we can then start to guide how we treat them, to help them to overcome their pain by helping them to get what they want in a positive life. A life full of purpose, no matter what it may be. Maybe it's a puppy. Maybe it's their family. Maybe it's a lot of money. Maybe it's a goal for better relationships. Maybe it's heroin. What is your reason for living? I have an incredibly cool friend that I admire. He's doing quite well now in life. But earlier, he had a rough time. One day I was talking with him as he told me about his view on some of the possible positive aspects of some psychotropic drugs such as cannabis, psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, and DMT. He was going over some of the ways they are being used to treat people with addictions, anxiety, and depression, and even enhance enlightenment. A lot of it made sense to me, and I agreed that I saw some positive uses for it in certain patient populations. I also stated that as an ICU and psych nurse, I just couldn't see any possible positive use for drugs like heroin, cocaine, or meth. He then surprised me with his next sentence. For years, heroin saved my life. I was shocked and confused. That was not what I was expecting at all. Who would have ever thought that someone could believe that heroin could save their life? I needed clarification. What the heck do you mean? I asked. He then told me the following story. I was kicked out of my house when I was 15 because I came out to my very religious adoptive parents that I was a lesbian. At the time of this story being told to me, my friend had transitioned from a transgender male, yet when he was younger identified as a lesbian. He continued, I was living on the streets, and the only people that would take me in were the skinheads. But since I was a woman, in order to have a place to stay and be protected by them from other people, I was pressured into doing things that I did not want to do. It was bad. I was in the lowest part of my life. It was horrible, but the feeling I got from the heroin took away the pain and suffering that I was going through physically, emotionally, and mentally. Heroin became my reason for living. I looked forward to my next hit. Even though I still don't like the drug and definitely don't recommend anyone ever trying it, I could at least understand where my friend was coming from and how something as strange as heroin could become someone's reason for living. When we figure out what the person is truly looking for, we can then guide them and help them to find their reason for living. We can help them achieve their level of happiness. If we can help them to get what they are looking for, it can help to give them a purpose to live. It doesn't matter what it is. Is it connection? Is it love? Is it peace? Is it a new Tesla? Is it a hike in the mountains? Maybe it's some form of enlightenment, some way to relieve the pain, some form of happiness. It gives us the opportunity to try and help guide them towards what they will create, fulfillment, and a life of meaning for them, no matter who they are. If it's you, then you can search for that as well for yourself. It is important to remember that in order to help someone, you need to be able to see what can help this person move forward. It would be important to consider what state of mind they are in. They might not be at a level where they can achieve their top desires or goals. They might just be searching for their own basic needs. One way to know how to help them is by doing a core elicitation. As stated before, we will cover this in the chapter titled Superman. However, for now, it would be good to help understand people where they are on their path in life by gaining better understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.